Good evening, everyone, and welcome to VERZUZ, the Cleveland Mayoral Candidate Edition with Mr. Justin Bibb and Councilman Basheer Jones. I'm Dr. R.A. Vernon, founder and senior pastor of the Word Church. And let me be clear, I'm not serving tonight in my official pastoral capacity, but as a private, concerned citizen of Cleveland, Ohio. After much contemplation and meditation, I personally feel that Cleveland needs something new. Fresh ideas, fresh vision, and in the spirit of tonight's VERZUZ battle, some new music that's relevant and not a remix from the 70s. The obvious elephant in the room tonight is that all the candidates that are running for mayor are not present. There have been several debates with all of them, and I personally feel that another of the same would have been an exercise in futility. To all of you who would like to hear from the other candidates, please feel free to host your own VERZUZ as a private citizen of these United States of America. All right, gentlemen, I want to jump right in. And as we discussed, I want this VERZUZ to be robust while remaining respectful. I want it to be honest without any ad hominem rhetoric. So, of course, this being a VERZUZ battle, I want it to be just a little bit different than normal battles or normal debates that you've been in already. More of a hip hop flavor. I sort of want to throw the ball up and let you guys go get it. I promise not to speechify. I preach on Sundays. This is not about me, it's about you two. So I want the city, greater Cleveland, the nation, who's ever watching, those who are still trying to make a decision about one of you or whatever they may be thinking, to have a chance to hear from you. So I want to jump right in. As I share with you guys, I'm thinking about 5 central themes, and I want to lift up really about 5 or 6 alliterated ideas: education, entrepreneurship, the economy, expansion, equity, and again, another elephant in the room, experience. So I want to begin by jumping right in. Here's how we'll do it. I'll lift up a question. I'll throw it to one of you. When one's done, the other can jump right in with your response. If there needs to be a rebuttal, that's fine. And I'll just sort of let it flow. And if I feel the need to jump in, allow me some moderator privilege. I want to start with you, Councilman Jones. Councilman Jones, education. If my child currently attends Cleveland Metropolitan School District, or I am a potential new resident of Cleveland with school-age children, first, how do you feel about our current educational praxis? Secondly, what would you do as mayor to improve our children's pedagogical pursuit?
First and foremost, Pastor Vernon, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you. You have shown immense courage with this. If I can just have a point of privilege and just do a small opening, and just to say that you are doing something that myself and Mr. Bibbs is doing as well, which is striving to take our city to the next level. And I appreciate you for following the footsteps of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who didn't just stand behind a pulpit and speak, but also had an impact on the political process, because we know that no matter how much we feed people, if we don't fight against policies that keep us hungry, then we will continue to stay behind. I do want to say to you that tonight I have some goals, and my goal, number one, is not to attack Mr. Bibbs, even though I do believe that I'm locks, and he's the dipset for sure.
Come on,
but my goal for tonight is to show the distinct differences between myself and my fraternity brother, Mr. Justin Bibbs. And what I want for the audience to do, if you can, is to remove the personalities. If you support me, I'm not looking for you to attack Mr. Bibbs. And if you support Mr. Bibbs, I'm hoping that you don't attack me. The goal is let's put our body of work on the table. Let's put our resume on the table when it comes to the work that we have done here in the city of Cleveland. The 3 things I want to be able to express is where I've been, where I am, and where I'm striving to take.
Councilman, I'm going to give you a chance to do all 3, but I want you to get to that first question for me.
without a
out of
doubt.
fairness, and I promise a closing statement for both of you. But again, let me raise the question. If my child currently attends Cleveland Metropolitan Schools, or I'm a potential new resident, first of all, how do you feel about our current educational praxis? Secondly, what would you do as mayor to improve our children's pedagogical pursuit?
Thank you so much. So what I was expressing, Pastor, was my why. And it's hard to truly come up with a solution for the educational system if you have never experienced it. I experienced it as a student at Case Elementary, as a student at MLK Middle School, MLK High School, before I went off to attend Morehouse College. So in order for us to understand the educational system, I can remember going off to Morehouse and having to take remedial classes because I was not properly prepared. So we have to prepare our children for the 21st century. How do we do that? By making sure that we are investing, and this will help me, investing in wraparound services. Most of the issue that our students are dealing with has nothing to do with the school they attend, but everything to do with the problem that they are bringing to school. 85% of student achievement has everything to do with the social, emotional issues. We have to invest in wraparound services. We have to become a school district that's not just preparing our children for college. I went to college poor and I left in debt, right? So what we have to do is making sure that we're not just sending people to college, but also we're sending them to deal with the trades or any other workforce in our country. And when we do that, when we prepare our children, build our children within the school system, that's the only way that our city can grow, with a strong school system.
Mr. Bibb?
You know, I've had a very diverse experience in education growing up where I grew up in Mount Pleasant, Union Miles, on 21st and Dove. I remember starting off in CMSD at Corlett in kindergarten. And my kindergarten teacher told my mom that your son is not going to survive in this school if he stays, because the gangs were trying to get after me when I was in kindergarten and 5 years old. And so my mom made a distinct choice to say, for my child to have a quality shot at life, I got to do whatever it takes to help my baby succeed. So she put me in a private Christian school. And then my parents divorced when I was 4, and I wanted to spend time with my dad. And so I went off to another public school in Shaker. And I think my experience in public education and private education really has affirmed my belief in the importance of high quality options across the city of Cleveland, particularly having a high quality public education system inside the core of our city. I believe, number one, we got to have more teachers of color that share the lived experiences of our students. All the data shows you that to close the achievement gap, having a high quality teacher that can keep a student engaged is essential. Secondly, we got to bring back the trades and the apprenticeship programs back to our schools. Right now, we have a youth unemployment crisis that's costing us about $1 billion of lost productivity. And I see a lot of future Basquiat's, right? A lot of future Ken Chenaults, a lot of future Barack Obamas crawling our streets inside TMSD and other schools across our city, that we are missing out on unlocking that potential. And the next mayor must do everything in their power to unleash that potential by providing the right set of opportunities for every young person inside the city of Cleveland.
I love it. I love it. Let's shift right to.
If I can.
You want a rebuttal? Jump in.
You know, what I would like to see for tonight, you know, is that we have to be able to put out receipts and put out facts.
Okay.
And the fact is that very few people have spent more time in the school district than I have. No one has spoken in the past 15 years at more high school graduations, taught in more classrooms. I had a leadership program called Be the Change Leadership Program, and I taught classes all throughout CMSD and to some of the charter schools. So what I want to do is be able to talk about not just what we're going to do, but what were we doing prior to politics.
I got a couple of receipts too. And I would just say this. I applaud the work you've done in inspiring your young people. That's one of the best things I admire about you, Councilman Jones. But what I've done in my experience, when I left college after American University, the chairman and CEO at Gallup hired me to run Gallup's national education practice to work with school districts all across the country. I led an initiative called the Gallup Student Poll, and I helped measure the hope, the well-being, and student voice of nearly 1 million students across public schools across this country. And I work with teachers and principals to really understand how do we create highly competitive education school districts. And so I think it's important to be a leader and expose ourselves to young people. I've gone to many schools inside CMSD and talked to young people. I've dedicated my life to be a mentor, but I've also been at the C-suite and at the table helping educational leaders figure out what are the right strategies to improve public education.
So Mr. Bibb, let me jump in. Are you arguing that experientially or grassroots, maybe your opponent, your dear brother, has done more, but you feel from a corporate perspective or in terms of organization, systematic structure, that you bring something else? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, what I'm saying is something a bit broader, that activism and change comes in many different facets.
Okay.
Right? We as a people would not be in this position right now without folks like Dr. King and Malcolm, but the Ken Chenaults, former CEO of American Express, the Vernon Jordans, who fought for Black folks to have a seat in corporate America. Activism comes in very different shapes and sizes. And it's important that as a people, we respect that diversity and recognize that Black leadership is not monolithic. It's critical to understand that, especially in this moment right now in America.
Well, I appreciate, listen, that's one thing that I appreciate and respect about Mr. Bibbs is the work that he has done across the country. But the question that was asked is, specifically, is CMSD. I went off to Morehouse College and I came right back to the neighborhood that raised me. I came right back to the school district that raised me. Yeah, we've all done some things across the country.
Listen, Councilman, I came back too. Let
me finish, Brother Bibb. Let me finish. Okay. You know, this work here in the city of Cleveland, I was doing it while you were still in, I think, high school, man. So, you know, I was doing this work, right?
I'm sorry, you're a little older than me, man.
I appreciate. Let me jump in. Let me finish
this point, Pastor Vernon. If I can finish this point, my point is that the work that Mr. Bibbs has done is absolutely necessary, and I would never disrespect that.
Yes.
But the point is that Cleveland has specific issues, specific problems, and you have to be able to understand Cleveland's problems in order to come up with a Cleveland solution. What you did nationally, we applaud. I appreciate that. But the reality is that Cleveland has its own issues, and very few people have done more on the ground within the educational system than I have in this city.
I like the answer in terms of speaking to what you feel you've done in terms of experience. I would argue with both of you, based on one of the elephants in the room, you two being our youngest candidates, we probably don't want to mention who was in high school when the other were in college, because someone's going to argue they were doing work before both of you were born.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, that's the reason why you don't have them here either, Pastor Vernon.
But I agree. So we don't want to, I mean, that's just simple math. The fact that if you're older than him, you probably started before him. But I do want to talk about
older people who haven't.
Yeah. But I do want to talk about, but I do think that needs to be raised in terms of receipts, what you've done already. I think that's credible. That said, I want to shift to another alliterated idea, and that would be economy. In 1992, James Carville, Bill Clinton's strategist, as most of you know, coined the phrase, it's the economy, stupid. Really meaning, to use a biblical term, that if there's a great economy, it covers a multitude of political sins. Persons are making money, they feel economically strong, that maybe they forgive some other things. So I want to just lift that and talk about a couple of things in terms of employment here in Cleveland. Cleveland has an unemployment rate that's lower than most in the city. The average income of a resident just above $24,000. The median household of other cities, some $53,000. What are you doing day one, first 100 days to fix the economy? Mr. Bibb, I'll start with you.
Well, it is the mayor's job to create the right conditions for good quality job growth all across this city. And the first thing I can do as mayor is do what I've worked with other successful mayors across the country, is do a top-down audit of every single department inside City Hall to make sure that our departments are structured in a transparent and logical way to do the hard work of truly modernizing city government for the 21st century, because we are one of the worst cities in the county and in the state to do business with. Everything from digitizing our permits, having a one-stop shop for small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and large corporations to understand how to grow and start a company in Northeast Ohio. And one of the biggest things we see from the folks that I've talked to who want to invest in Cleveland is they don't know who to talk to when they want to invest. Do you go to the chamber? Do you go to the county executive? Do you go to the mayor's office? Do you go to Jumpstart? As mayor, one thing I want to do, I want to have a regional economic development cabinet that works with the county executive, the chamber, our CDCs to really coordinate and be more proactive about how we grow and attract good quality jobs all across our community. And we got to make sure we focus on building back parts of the east side, particularly the southeast side, because without doing that, this city will not be thriving long term, in my opinion.
So let me give some exact numbers here before you jump in, Councilman Jones. Cleveland has seen the job market increase by 1% over the last year. Future job growth over the next 10 years is predicted to be 21.4%, which is lower than the U.S. average of 33.5%. The average income of a Cleveland resident, $17,436 a year. The U.S. average is $28,555 a year. The median household income of a Cleveland resident is $26,179 a year. The U.S. average is $53,482 a year. Talk about that disparity, Councilman Jones, and give me 3 or 4 succinct, specific things you would do to change the game in Cleveland.
I mean, I know that experience. My family, we were homeless. We lived in the Salvation Army, before moving into transitional housing. I went from homelessness in this city to being a homeowner. So I understand that process. But I want to be clear that I want the audience to remove personality and just look at resume and not just talk about what we're going to do, but what has been done. In Ward 7, we have brought thousands of new jobs to Ward 7. 2 brand new hotels, the True Hilton, the Residence Inn on 101st in Chester. We have a new manufacturing company called Magnet that's going to be bringing manufacturing jobs or educating people on how to do manufacturing jobs. We brought the Cleveland Foundation to the Ward 7. We brought Cross Country that's bringing 700 new jobs. How do we do that? We did it because I'm a champion for my community. I'm a champion. You can't just build buildings without building people. Right? The issue is not that there's a lack of jobs. The issue is that we don't have enough of our community prepared to take these jobs. So what we have to do is have a mayor that's not just stuck in City Hall, but is on the streets and being able to speak the language of the people. Right? The people that support me, right, represent the majority of this of what people go through in this city. What I mean is that I have a history of speaking up for Black, brown, and poor people in this city. That has been my path. And when I became the council person, I never forgot it. I never stopped it. So what I'm saying to you is we have to be our authentic selves. And the way that we do that is even when we are in these back rooms, we don't forget the people that we are standing up for and that we're fighting for. So being a champion, promoting the best that your city has to offer. And also, of course, being able to do better business in City Hall. People will tell you, if you want to try to do business in City Hall, it could take months or even a year just to get a simple permit. We have to change that process. But you have to have a mayor who can speak the language of the people. This is very important.
Mr. Bibb, rebuttal?
Listen, it's great to see the progress in Ward 7, but I would also argue that work was long planned. And it's important to have good council leadership. But, I played a significant role in advising the Cleveland Foundation as well.
Mr. Bibb, let me jump in. You made a big statement. Are you arguing that would have happened no matter who the congressperson was?
What I'm saying is this: it's important.
Let's get Ron Richards on the phone. Say that.
It's important to look at the totality of what's happening in the community, because one person alone can't do these things in isolation. Ward 7 has some great assets, and I applaud the councilman for the work he's done to leverage those assets to drive change. But not every part of our community has those assets. So it's important for the next mayor to understand what are the strengths and weaknesses of all parts of our community. How do we find a way to close those gaps and make sure that every neighborhood in the city, particularly in the East Side, has strong anchor institutions to invest in so every neighborhood can thrive? That's important.
Mr. Bibb, let me throw one question right before you jump in, Councilman Jones. Mr. Bibb, John Maxwell said this. He said, everything rises and falls on leadership. Are you suggesting, do you believe, honestly, that it was Councilman Jones's leadership that led to the completion of those projects? Or are you suggesting, I mean, tell me, what do you mean? I agree.
It's important to give credit to other players that play the role, right? Because not one person can do these things in isolation. And that's the problem we have in Cleveland right now. We have this Messiah complex that one mayor or one council person can solve our problems.
Well,
right?
let me say,
it's got to be a community collaborative approach and effort to make sure that we're building, right, our community back together as a collective. One person can't do this alone.
But one person can stop it. And the fact is that the council person that was before me, Cleveland Foundation, could have moved into Ward 7. And you and I both know that the council person before me was standing in the way of progress. And they would not have moved into Ward 7 if that council person before me would have remained there. Ron Richards called me personally. Okay? India Pierce Lee called me personally. Right? Because we understand that there is an institutional issue when it comes to our community and institutions trying to move into the community.
I just think it's important to give credit.
Mr. Bibb, let him finish. I'll let you have your back.
You made a tough comment, and I want to make sure that I correct you. You know, there's no way that as the council person, you have to, and you're absolutely correct, you have to work with the Director Epstein's of Midtown, and the John and Alifos at Famicos, and the India Pierce Lee with Cleveland Foundation, and the Lillian Courage. You have to be able to work with them. But let's be crystal clear. As the council person, I'm the representative of my community, and I had to make sure that the Cleveland Foundation was being very gentle toward the community in which they wanted to come in. Now, does Huff have a lot of great assets? Without a doubt. But let's be clear, right? Huff also has a history that people try to use against us, which is what they call the Huff riots, what we call the Huff rebellion. So we had to sell the great parts of Ward 7. So no, did I do it by myself? No, without a doubt. I did not do it alone. But let's be clear. My signature is the one that has to go on the permitting process. My vote is the one that has to move it along. Great leadership is important, and that's why I'm deciding to run for mayor.
Mr. Bibb, a final rebuttal on the economy?
Listen, I would just say this. It's important that we have a mayor that recognizes how to give credit, how to share the good deeds and the good work, to have shared prosperity, and how to make sure we have better connectivity as we think about how to drive these investments over time.
Thank you.
Can I get a final on that?
You're going to get a final rebuttal.
I just want to say, when you talk about the economy, there's very few neighborhoods in our city that has done more than what we've done in not even 4 years. Take away a year for COVID, 2.5 years. We're not even gotten to January. You're talking about the digital seat that's in Ward 7, right? You're talking about the 2 brand new hotels. You're talking about the Cleveland Foundation, a brand new library. You're talking about Magnet, cross country. You're talking a brand new supermarket in Dave's Supermarket. These are the things that I have done. I've had success prior to as a public servant, but this is the work that I've done as a public official. This is the things that I've accomplished, right? Not by myself, but with the help of others. But you cannot deny, and that's what the media of this city strives to do. It's to deny what we have accomplished in Ward 7. It's been phenomenal what we've done.
I'm not denying your accomplishments. I think
our accomplishments.
Yeah, exactly. Share prosperity.
Okay, gentlemen, I love it, and let's keep right moving. Let's keep right on moving here. We've talked about education. We've talked about the economy, and I guess now I want to shift to equity. It was Gandhi who said the true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. Most of you know I'm a man of the cloth, and so Matthew 25, of course, is very important to me. It's one of my mantras in terms of life. I was hungry, you fed me. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, you let me into your home. I was naked, you clothed me. In prison, you visited me. I want to ask of both of you, and I'll begin with you, Mr. Bibb, again. What does that mean to you, if not theologically, at least pragmatically? And does your track record reflect, or your record, your belief in Matthew 25 ministry as a public servant?
You know, Dr. Vernon, I realized when I was a junior in high school that I wanted to one day to run for office because I got my politics from Black liberation theology. And everything I've done to this day has been focused on getting experience in government, getting experience in the private sector, getting experience in the nonprofit sector to one day lead in the way to dismantle systems, right? And when I think about the word equity, I think about it in this notion of how do we dismantle structural systems that have undermined people of color for far too long. And my track record is simple. Number one, as a leader at RTA, you know, I fought to make sure we had body cams on transit police to get more accountability in that department. At Gallup, I made sure I worked on projects focused on economic development and bringing equity to the partners and clients and communities that I served. And, you know, as mayor, I intend to do everything in my power to ensure where the city has power and leverage, we are truly dismantling systems to ensure that our people can achieve that liberation. Because until we achieve that liberation, Cleveland will not be that city of opportunity that I dream about day in and day out.
Councilman Jones, I would ask you the same question, and that would be this. Theologically, pragmatically, Matthew 25, helping the poor, helping those in need, the least of these. What would you do as mayor, and what does your track record as a public servant reflect?
You know, this is a really important question. You know, when I think about my brother speaking about the Black liberation theology, we recognize that you got to speak up. You got to speak out. You can't be silent about the issues that are facing our community. And maybe there's some loud voices and words happening in some places, but it just never reached the streets. It never reached the streets, man. Well, the fact is that you gotta let me finish.
Let him finish.
The fact is that Black people are suffering in the city. And we have been suffering in the city for a long time. And I can tell you, ever since I graduated from MLK, even before that, as a young poet, a young author in this city, receiving my recommendation letter to go to Morehouse from one of the greatest pastors and reverends in this country has seen, and Dr. Reverend Otis Moss, is that you have to be a thorn in the side of a system that benefits off of the oppression of oppressed people. And the fact is that when we look at the systems in Cleveland, how is it that you have majority of Black leadership, but Black people are still suffering? How is that possible? So when people see me, they see me, Pastor Vernon, as a threat to a system that they want to keep intact. And that's the reason why. So who has been fighting? Who has been leading the marches here in the city? Who has stood up and fought? Listen, remove Basheer Jones. Just look at the resume of who has been the voice, whether it was on radio, whether it was leading marches, whether it's in classrooms, whether it's protesting against the conditions of the jails, whether it's helping our brothers and sisters who are locked behind those bars. The streets know exactly who I am because I have been on the streets, and even sometimes physically, as I spent the night on 79th and Superior because of the violence going on in my neighborhood. So when we talk about equity, I didn't change once I became a councilman. I fought for equity there. What's my example? Declaring racism a public health crisis, which I wasn't really happy with that. They just threw that in there. I actually wanted to do a repair bill, and the repair bill was going to take money from the medical marijuana industry here in Cleveland and give it to those who have been overly criminalized by the fact that they have been arrested and criminalized by this medical marijuana.
Councilman Jones, you're doing well. I'm going to give you a rebuttal. Before you get too far out, I want Mr. Bibb to jump in and speak to that.
Well, with all the respect, Councilman, I think what you're suggesting is that whoever has the loudest microphone is the one that's making change. I disagree.
Whoever had the loudest actions is
well, let me finish. Let me finish, brother. Let me finish. Here's my view. We are hiring a chief executive officer to lead a $1.8 billion municipal corporation, right? Now, is it important for the mayor to also be an activist and understand how to connect with folks on the front lines? Absolutely. But at the same time, we have had dedicated leaders in this community and all across the country of Black leaders that have played the inside game and the outside game. We got to do both. We got to do both. And it is not an either or proposition. And I'm making the case to voters that I've done it as an activist, right? Have I led as many marches as you? Absolutely not. I'll concede that point to you, Councilman Jones. But I've been on the streets fighting for criminal justice reform, and I've been in the boardroom fighting for these issues on behalf of my people. And I'm a trusted, credible leader there as well, too, right? And it's important that we respect leadership that can do both, because it is not mutually exclusive. And when we make it mutually exclusive, we lose more power as a people long term, right? We don't get the Civil Rights Bill without Lyndon Baines Johnson and Dr. King, right? We need both. We need.
And that's my argument, little brother. My argument is that it hasn't been both. That's the argument that I'm making. Okay. But it has been both. It has been both in the sense of not only have we led marches, but you know what I did, brother? I came back to the neighborhood that raised me. I came back and I ran for city council, and I lost at first, brother. 2013. I lost by 600 votes. I came back and ran again, 2017, and won by 13 votes. And then what I did, brother, is that I had over a budget. I managed over a budget of $1 million. I had a staff. So it's not just somebody that's just talking the talk, but you can come into my neighborhood and you can see a $30 million building that's standing on land that they don't own because it's owned by a Huff Community Land Trust that I helped create with the Cleveland Foundation. You can come into my neighborhood and you can see a brand new library that's being built right now. You can come into my neighborhood and see the Allen Estates that's being ran and developed by Black women. Why? Because I need to see the city of Cleveland needs to make sure that we are investing in more Black women and people of color to do economic business in this city. I'm not just some activist talking. No, brother. My talking is action. And if you look in my neighborhood, I didn't just talk it. I walked it. I came back to my neighborhood.
I'm arguing here.
Question I want for people to ask, brother.
What I'm arguing here is
I came back to my neighborhood.
The central premise of what you said before is that it's one or the other. It is not, right?
No,
just because I have not led as many marches and rallies as you does not make me less qualified.
I'm saying you didn't come back home.
And I came back home. I came back home. I was appointed to be the youngest cabinet member, right, in the first county executives administration, appointed to the board of Tri-C, fighting for higher public education in the county on the board of Tri-C, right?
These are not receipts, little brother. These are not receipts. You got to give us examples of how you have fought. How have you fought? Me, I came back home, Justin.
Well,
I came back.
Let me tell you what I did when I was in county government.
You said that you
I laid the foundation. I laid the foundation for a countywide scholarship program. Right?
Hold up,
I got plenty of receipts.
Mr. Bibb,
I want you to drop those receipts, brother.
Councilman, you guys are doing great. And by the way, I'm not jumping in every time y'all disagree. This is VERZUZ. This is not a regular debate. In VERZUZ, you dropping bars, and so sometimes you just got to freestyle.
Like Donda or certified lover boy right here, man.
Listen.
We don't have to fight over that one, man.
But I do want to push you further. I want to push both of you further. And I hear you raising your experience, Councilman Jones, in terms of what is tangible, touchable, seeable right now. Of course, you never having had public office, you haven't had the opportunity yet to show us what you would do if you had your own ward. So that said, I want to push you both further. It's no secret to anybody watching this, Pastor Vernon loves poor people. And when I say loves poor people, I love everybody, but Jesus is clear. And most of you know from a theological slant, I am a Christian. But to that end, I do want to raise this to both of you. Who's going to do the most for poor people? And give me at least 3 examples of exactly how. Now, there's more than poor people in Cleveland, so don't
Yeah, but
put
the
me in this
majority
corner
of
of the
us,
box. Let me
the
be clear. I'm
majority,
going to expand. I'm going to expand on the next question. There's more than poor people in Cleveland, but we haven't gotten to expansion entrepreneurship yet. Right now, we're on equity. In my mind, justice, the least of these. I need you both, and I'll give you both a few minutes and I'll be quiet. Tell me exactly how persons of all colors who are under or beneath the poverty line are going to be better because you're poor. I do American gangster outreach. Both of y'all know that. I'm pulling up with the trucks. I'm throwing turkeys out the window. If you need a car, I'm buying you one. You need a house, come get it. We're not asking for welfare cards. I'm a pastor. You two are politicians. Tell me, you talked about Lyndon Johnson and Dr. King, the conflating of both. All right. Tell me how you two, as it were, as Lyndon Johnson, are going to work with the Dr. Kings, or do you consider yourself both? Whatever it is, here's what I want to know. What are you going to do? And I'm going to you, Mr. Bibb. Tell me exactly what you're going to do.
You cut off my first question. You cut off my statement when I was making a statement before it.
Okay.
Mr. Bibb the opportunity. So I want
Okay, well, let me do this. I'll go to you first. Let me just stop. Tell me exactly. I know what you've done. Tell me, as mayor, how are persons who are hurting? That's my greatest concern, unapologetically. My greatest concern is how are people that are hurting going to feel the impact of you being mayor in the first 100 days?
Well, first I want to say thank you so much. I appreciate it. What I want to say is that I know you're asking what we're going to do, but the future is always a determinant of what you've done in the past.
Yes.
The first thing I did when I became a councilman was I remember being a young boy standing in the food pantry line. So the first thing I did was created something in my mother's honor, who passed away from breast cancer, the Imani Food Distribution Center, with the help of the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. We feed over 1,000 people every single month. Every single month we do that. But at the same time, being down at City Hall, making sure that City Hall is more equitable, whether it's fighting to make sure that there's more diversity in the police force, fighting to make sure there's more diversity in all the safety forces in every department in the city, right? So as mayor, the first thing that we want to do is we want to give people an opportunity to do business in this city. We want to partner with the Greater Cleveland Food Bank and make sure that all neighborhoods have access to fresh fruits and fresh vegetables. I want to be a mayor that's going to be in the streets. And I don't want us to deny. You asked the question of, you're a politician. I am using the political process to bring liberation to my community. And the political process is how I'm using it at this moment. But I wasn't always a politician, but I've always been an activist. And you cannot deny and demean the impact of activism and how it has impacted the politics. So
Can Mr. Bibb jump in?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I want to be concrete. To me, the biggest thing we can do to get people out of poverty and lift them up is by tackling public education in the city of Cleveland. I've seen it in my own life through my mom's sacrifice. And as mayor, one thing I want to do that can solve that problem long term is have year-round apprenticeship and vocational programs for every junior and senior inside of CMSD high school, where they're making at least $15 an hour and have a pathway to the middle class. We have nearly 50,000 in-demand jobs available in manufacturing, healthcare, technology, at Lincoln Electric, at the Clinton, at Eaton, etc. And not everyone's going to go to college. And the same money we're spending on CS education is the same money we should be spending to have a straight-to-work pipeline for every child inside CMSD. And then you talked about how do we build the next generation of Black wealth and restore the Black middle class in Cleveland. The city of Cleveland right now is going to invest in a $2 billion master plan to revitalize our airport. That is a moonshot opportunity to do what Maynard Jackson did in Atlanta, to make sure that that project has our fair share of Black-owned businesses, right, getting their piece of the pie. And we can't keep making these excuses. Oh, there's no Black-owned business to invest in, so we're going to just give it to another firm. Well, if a firm doesn't exist, the city should be the first lead investor to incubate that business. The city of Cleveland must be a champion to support wealth creation, a champion to uplift folks out of poverty, and it's going to require a mayor who understands how markets work, but also who understands structurally how to create policies to make these solutions systematized and operationalized long term.
Councilman Jones?
So let me give you receipts, because my brother, man, he sounds great.
Well,
sounds great.
Vernon was very clear.
Can I speak, brother? Can I speak, brother? Come on, brother. All right. So listen, this is what we've done in Ward 7. In Ward 7, the Allen Estates is led by Black women developers. The library that's being built, I said, you're going to build this library, make sure that Black contractors have the opportunity. You want to build this building over here? Right now, there's more Black developers doing business in Ward 7 than any other part of the city. What Justin's saying is correct. I love what he's saying. I just want him to recognize that we're doing it already. We're doing it right now in Ward 7. And I think that Justin's brain is brilliant. I think he's great. But I want him to understand that we're doing what you're saying right now in Ward 7. And we're going to do it again.
I would just respond to Dr. Vernon's question. He said, I don't care about what you've done. What would you do specifically as mayor in a concrete policy agenda? Yeah. What's the concrete policy agenda, right? Beyond what you're doing in Ward 7, because the city of Cleveland is not just Ward 7, my brother. The city of Cleveland
I'm a councilman in Ward 7, so I'm giving
I agree.
The work.
But
you have a lot of examples, but I want you to give the receipts. You have to give concrete receipts of what you've done. So I'm giving concrete receipts. Yeah. I can take you 2 families that we fed. I can take you 2 Black developers who are doing business right now in Ward 7 that was not doing business before I got there. So I don't want to make this not about but you have to understand that leadership is important, brother. Yeah.
And I can talk all day about my accomplishments in the private sector.
Well, I want to hear it. I want to hear it how it has impacted Cleveland.
Let me stop both of you for a minute. So we're going there next, but if you allow me some moderator privilege, whatever else I'm going to ask you tonight, unequivocally, this part is the most important to me. And since I happen to have the privilege of being host tonight, I'm going to park here a little longer than I will on the rest of it. So, Mr. Bibb, granted, I think I hear you saying, which is correct, Councilman Jones, you've had a ward. You've been blessed to lead a ward, so you've had a chance to see or to show what you can do in that capacity. I've not held political office yet, so you're saying, I believe if I had the office, I would do my thing at a greater level. I hope that's what you believe about yourself. Here's the question I'm asking. Give me 2 or 3 concrete things you've done just as a citizen. Make me believe, make persons who may doubt it believe that you have a heart for the poor, because that's where Jesus lived. That's where I live as a pastor. And trust me, again, I'm going to say there are more than poor people in Cleveland. So we're going there next. But while we're here, help the audience to see your heart for the hurting, what you've done specifically. And again, go a little bit further as to from walking the streets to touching people. I mean, what would your heart be for those persons who live on 30th, 40th, 55th, Garden Valley, the West Side projects, Huff, poor people all over the city of Cleveland? Tell me your heart, not just ideas. Help me to see your heart tonight.
Yeah, well, in terms of my heart, I think it's important that in the city of Cleveland, we do what 60 other mayors across the country have already done, where they have a universal basic income program, right? A guaranteed income floor. And all the data shows that program increases employment, increases dignity, makes people more self-sufficient. That's critical. When I was at Gallup, I led an effort with the mayor of Tulsa to really re-engineer the entire city government to find a better way to have better data, better analytics, to really reimagine how the government of Tulsa really invested in historically underserved communities of color. That was a multi-million-dollar project that the mayor of Tulsa said, Justin, I need your help, right? And mayors across the country came to me and said, how do we deploy your framework and strategy and understanding how to measure equity, how to measure the lived experience of what's going on in cities, and take that data to help us govern and manage our cities differently, right? Case in point. The other thing I want to say is this: public transit is one of the biggest pain points for many of our residents across the city. During this pandemic, I led the effort at RTA to not only live stream our board meetings before the pandemic, so folks knew what was going on so they can get on the bus on time, but in conjunction with our activists, I fought to reduce fares which led to a $1.3 million savings for RTA riders all across this city, right? So I gave you a private sector example and a quasi-public sector example.
So let me jump in. Councilman Jones, I'll give you the same opportunity. I want to present the question the same way. Persons who are poor, persons of color, persons of all colors who are struggling, help me to see your heart for the hurting in whichever way you choose to.
Well, I want to say I just came back from Tulsa, man, and I don't know what was going on there, brother. Tulsa still have a lot of issues, brother Bibbs.
What is Ward 7, by the way?
I mean, you know, Tulsa, Oklahoma still has struggles. Remember Black Wall Street, man, they're still dealing with major issues there. But anyway, my point is, you asked me, you know, I remember that in my neighborhood of Ward 7, there was a lot of violence going on. A lot of people were being killed on this specific corner. And what I did was I pitched a tent on 79th and Superior. Now, Pastor Vernon, I ain't never pitched a tent in my life. I never been camping. I don't know nothing about pitching a tent. I had to have people come. And I pitched a tent and I stayed there for 72 hours. 72 hours, I spent the night there. And while I was there, people came from all across the region dropping off food. And it became a community discussion of how do we bring and how do we create safer neighborhoods. Listen, when anything happens in this city of Cleveland, and I'm not talking about outside of Cleveland, I'm talking about in Cleveland, when it comes to Black people specifically in our city, Black, brown, and poor people, and if people need someone to fight against injustice on their behalf, they call Basheer Jones. Their families reach out to me, and I go, whether it's help to pay for funerals, whether it's help women who are missing, you know. That has been my priority and goal in this city for years. And once again, if you just remove the name and personality, you have an issue with it. Jay-Z said, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. All you have to do is take a look at my body of work. Even if you don't like me, you cannot throw away the fact that I have been on the front lines on behalf of my community.
Okay, I love it. We got some bars from Basheer. I love it.
I see.
Let's drop this down. Really quickly, we're coming to a conclusion. If I've learned anything in this social media reality, person's attention spans are not as long as they used to be, and so I'd rather quit while we're ahead. I just want everybody to get a sense of both of your hearts, your minds, your spirits, your ideas. Let me raise this, as I said earlier, to quote Dr. Cornel West, I love everybody, but my ministry, my heart begins on the chocolate side of town. That said, Black liberation theology, the father of that being Dr. James Cone, of course, God rest his soul, we lost him a few years ago, but even he would tell you, God loves everybody, and there are persons who are white watching, and I'm sure you guys would appreciate at least 2 or 3 white votes also, and Latino votes. Everyone in Cleveland has to vote. So to that end, I want to broaden our conversation some. Everybody's not poor. There are entrepreneurs watching. There are future entrepreneurs, bank executives, contractors. In a very real sense, they'll also be looking for leadership. Let me say something else. I was in Chicago this summer. I took my children. And of course, I was amazed and blessed to see the tremendous downtown area, where literally with all of the shootings happening in Chicago, yet that's the place I chose to take my family because of its downtown, all the stores in one central area, Magnificent Mile, and of course, being an absolute lover of Cleveland, I couldn't help but land my hotel and ask myself, how come our downtown doesn't look like that? Who had that vision? When did it start? And where would we go? What would we do to get there? So I want to start with you, Councilman Jones. Again, to persons who are entrepreneurs, to contractors that are listening, to persons who are wondering, again, we talked about in the spirit of the mayor of Atlanta, increasing or more millionaires, new millionaires coming out of your leadership. Talk to people of all colors, persons who have 99 problems, but money's not one, and they want more money, and they want to know how you're going to expand, how their business is going to be blessed, and talk to that. Speak to that.
Well, the fact is that what people need to understand, you know, majority of my support you're going to find is coming from the east side of Cleveland, because that is the neighborhoods that I have been representing and fighting for. But I want my people on the West Side to understand that even though that is the case, it does not mean that I don't care about your issues, because your issues is our issues. But what we're seeing is that a stronger West Side does not necessarily make for a stronger Cleveland if there's not also a stronger East Side. The East Side must be developed. The East Side must be invested in. And because if more people, which more people are on the East Side, are doing well, then they won't have to travel to the West Side and cause problems, right? So we have to have a strong East Side and a strong West Side. And what I want for people to understand is I was talking to some business owners and saying, you want my community to become stronger. You want them to do better, because that would mean a stronger business for you. That would mean less violence means an increase in business and an increase in investment. In Ward 7, what I did was I sat down my young guys from the different parts of the community. I sat them down and said, the more violence that you bring to this community, the less they're going to invest in it. And you know what? We haven't had major crime in my neighborhood for a long time as a result of that conversation. So when I want to say to the business owners, to those who are looking to come to Cleveland, you want to have a mayor that can reach all people, that can speak the language of all people. But let's be clear. The language of most people in Cleveland is a language of poverty. And I understand that language very, very well. Matter of fact, I'm fluent in that language.
Mr. Bibb, jump right in.
I would say this. For any major globally competitive city, you talked about Chicago, we got to have a thriving urban core and a competitive downtown. We've seen some solid strides in our core downtown over the last decade. Population has grown to almost 20,000 people living in the core of downtown. I think that's a good step in the right direction. But for us to, put our foot on the gas and see more progress, we got to do a couple of things. Number one, better connect downtown to our lakefront. Excited to see what the Browns are looking to do with the stadium renovations and better developing that part of the lakefront. I think once we get momentum there, we can start to have an honest conversation about the future of Burke and think about how we remove those highways that have redlined many of our neighborhoods on the east side from the lakefront. That's essential. And then public square. We spent millions of dollars in investing in public square, which is supposed to be the front door of the city of Cleveland. And we got to do a better job of making sure that asset can be realized over time for all of our residents to come down and explore. But without a thriving downtown, we can't have the tax revenue we need to invest in all of our neighborhoods in the city, because all of our neighborhoods are interconnected in terms of economic development long term.
Okay, I want to do this. Our time is just about up. Listen, you guys have done several debates, and persons who are interested have heard you along with the other candidates. And so by no means do I think you'll be able to give us everything you want to do in a 45 minutes to an hour session. I just wanted those persons of which I have some influence over to at least hear from both of you, because I think both of you are tremendous young men. And I went further this time than I've ever went because I wanted persons to hear. Again, I would say to those watching, I know there are more than just these two candidates. To have brought all of them would have just been a camera op for me. And that's not what I was interested in. All seven can't win. Only one can win. And so I wanted to narrow the field unapologetically. Again, I want some fresh music, not a remix from the 70s. I just can't allow that to happen on my watch to the best of my ability. And that I'm unapologetic about. To that end, I read something that I want to close with and give you guys a final statement. This hurt me to hear as I read it. And I thought to myself, I want a mayor that goes about changing this perception. I read something in my preparation that touched me deeply. Mike from Normandy, Tennessee. Mike from Normandy, Tennessee says about this city that all three of us love, and I quote, "I lived in Cleveland for 7 long, miserable years. I have lived in many cities and towns across the U.S., and I can truthfully say that Cleveland is the only city where I got extremely depressed. Cloudy, cold, and either rain or snow most of the time. The city is dismal, to say the least. Crime runs rapid. You just don't feel comfortable in any part of the city. Roads are in deplorable shape. Racism is rapid. Jobs are few and far between. The transit system sucks at best. If you're thinking about moving there, just don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
How do we change that perception? And I'll give you both a final word to go along with it. Mr. Bibb, I'll begin with you.
I would just say this. First, I want to thank you, Dr. Vernon, for putting this conversation together. I really enjoyed this conversation with my brother, Councilman Jones. He's made me a better candidate in this process. Hopefully, I've made him a better candidate in this process. And you've done something important tonight. You are elevating the next generation of Black leadership in the city. And that's progress. That's progress.
Bless you.
And I would say to the gentleman's question, this is about hope, right? Giving people hope and promise that the city is going to work for them. And until we get back to the basics of lowering crime, making sure we do the hard work of reimagining what policing should look like in our city, until we think differently about technology and innovation and think about how we have a modern and responsive city hall to better support our seniors, to better invest in our young people, and making sure we can build on the progress we've seen inside CMSD so that every child has the skills they need to compete. It's all about getting back to the basics. And I think the next mayor must be laser focused on doing the blocking and tackling of getting back to the basics so we can one day become the best mid-sized city in America. And I'm in this race because, listen, but for the grace of God, loving parents, and my elders and some mentors, growing up on one of the toughest blocks in the city, I would not be a top tier candidate at 34 to be the next mayor of Cleveland. This city has poured so much into me, and I want to give back. And I truly believe I want to be a servant leader, not a politician. That's why I'm in this race. And I'm hopeful voters will give their faith in me so we can turn the page and finally usher in a new political movement to change the city for the better. And I'm grateful for the opportunity this evening.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Pastor Vernon. This is Black liberation theology in practice. Mm-hmm. This is what this is, not just in words, but to truly lead by example. And as you know, being a leader is not always easy. The very people that you're striving to help the most sometimes will be your greatest oppositions. But we still love with a godly love, and I appreciate it. And I've enjoyed Brother Bibbs as well. It's been a great race. It'll continue to be, and it's going to be amazing. Listen, I understand that hopelessness. You know, I can remember my mother and my siblings living in the Salvation Army. You had to be in by 6 p.m. or you couldn't get any dinner. I can remember just watching my mother sob, wondering how we were going to get out this situation. And then the very place that we moved to was to Ward 7, transitional housing. And now on that same street down the block, I purchased my first home. So when it comes to hope, I understand it. The hope that tomorrow can be better than today. But many people in our community don't believe that, and I understand that. The city of Cleveland has so much potential, and what I want the voters out there to understand is that as you're looking at this race, not just looking at ideas of what can happen, but truly remember those who stood by your side in the darkest of nights. Remember those who stood by your side when there were no cameras. Remember those that stood by your side when no one was paying attention. And that is who I've been. I have been dedicated to my community ever since I was a child. And it was the great people who raised me, from the Reverend Mosses and the Barbara Bird Bennetts and the Mike Nelsons and the Miss Thomases and Miss Pattersons and on and on and on, who said, Basheer, you can go down to Atlanta, but don't you stay there. You better come back. And that's exactly what I did. And I came back to the very community that raised me. And I ran to become councilman. And now I'm running for mayor. And I didn't need a long term or 2 or 3 terms to see the problem. The problem is crystal clear. Listen, no matter who you vote for, Mr. Bibbs and I are the future of politics in the city. And I believe that Mr. Bibbs is very brilliant, and I have a lot of respect and honor for his mom. I really do. But also I believe that he will be great as one of our directors. And so
thank you.
I think he'll make a great director. I'm asking for your vote. 14.
You're silly, bro. You're silly, bro.
Thank you, gentlemen.
06.
06, man.
06.
06. I didn't want, well, hey, we can't forget that too.
Amen,
06.
brother. Amen.
Listen, let me throw this at both of you. I appreciate both of you. I'm praying for both you and your family. If you allow me just a little pastoral privilege to pray for both of you and to pray for our city, those that are watching all across the world, if you believe in the power of prayer. I don't know, and maybe we're in a competition here, if anybody loves the city of Cleveland more than R.A. Vernon does. It has given me everything I have. I love it, born and raised like these two candidates and our candidates. It's very important to me that the right person become mayor. Those who are saying, Dr. Vernon, you've never come out this far. I just felt for the first time a kind of fear that the wrong person becoming mayor could take us back. Way back, and I just couldn't let that happen on my watch without at least putting forth an effort to push two young men that I respect prayerfully at least past the primary. So I'm begging all of you on September 14th, I need you to bum rush. And when I pray about it more, we may be doing something that's never been done in terms of buses and all kind of things to get persons to the polls because I want to make sure that someone we all love, respect, becomes the next mayor of Cleveland that will have a heart for our community. Father, I thank you for both of them now. And Father, I pray for them. Let your will be done over this city. Father, we thank you for both of them pursuing pedagogy, both of them being great young men who represent the Black race in an awesome way. Now, God, put your grace on both of them, Father. Thank you, God. Men this age could be doing anything, or even worse, doing nothing. But yet both of them have spent the entirety of their lives in preparation. Morehouse University, another becoming an attorney, pursuing law, Case Western Reserve, just doing wonderful things. We really couldn't lose with either one of them. Only one can be mayor. And Father, I pray that your divine will be done in this city. Lord, if not these two, Lord, we really believe that nothing happens that you don't allow. So whoever becomes mayor, I pray a grace over them because we only can have one mayor at a time. So Father, I pray now that your will be done in the city of Cleveland. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Well, everybody, this has been the first that I know of versus the mayoral candidate version. So I guess we made some history. And hey, brothers, why not? 1119.
Oh,
6.
This has
you
been
making
versus.
pretty good Swiss beats, Dr. Vernon, by the way. You got it. You got it, man.
God bless you all. I'm praying for you.
Bless
Take care.